was born into a world that still believed flight itself was a miracle. The skies were young with possibility, and the future felt close enough to touch. As a child, I was not drawn to toys, nor to the games of other boys. I was drawn upward. The heavens called to me long before I knew how to name what I felt. My earliest memories are not of people, but of machines, of diagrams, of imagined engines roaring beyond gravity. I devoured pulp science fiction not as fantasy, but as prophecy. I did not dream of wealth or fame. I dreamed of fire that could lift a man beyond the pull of the earth. Yet even then, another current ran beneath that dream. For every rocket I built, there was a symbol I sketched. For every equation, a question I could not solve by mathematics alone. I sensed that the universe had hidden doors not only of physics, but of will, of consciousness, of the unseen architecture beneath reality. Most boys outgrow that sense. I did not. By my teenage years, I was already experimenting with explosives, fuels, and unstable mixtures that frightened adults and thrilled me. Many of those early tests ended in failure. Some ended in fire. A few ended in explosions that nearly took my life. But each disaster taught me something new, not merely how matter behaves, but how risk sharpens the mind. I was expelled from schools, rejected by institutions, dismissed as reckless. Yet every rejection drove me further into isolation and into obsession. I did not want permission to change the world. I intended to do it anyway. The sky was not distant to me. It was waiting. I was not born into laboratories. I forced my way into them. By the 1930s, I joined a small circle of men who shared my obsession with propulsion. We were not funded by governments. We had no corporate backing. We had ideas. We had hunger, and we had no fear of failure. We called ourselves the Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory Rocket Group, later known as the Galactic Research Group. Our laboratory was a barren stretch of desert called the Arroyo Seco. There, beneath a brutal sun and in choking dust, we tried to teach humanity how to leave the Earth. Again and again, our experiments failed. Engines exploded, fuels destabilized, equipment shattered. Injuries were common. Death always felt near. The press mocked us as Suicide Squad. What they called madness, I called inevitability. Every failure was simply a step closer to ignition that would not go out. It was here that liquid fuel rocket propulsion first took form in America. It was here that the foundations of what would become NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory were laid. History would later credit institutions and administrators, but history rarely names the men who bled first. I did. My work would soon change the future of warfare, the future of space exploration, and the future of humanity's relationship with the cosmos. Yet even as my scientific reputation grew, another identity was forming within me, one that thrived in shadows rather than laboratories, because while my days belonged to engines and equations, my nights belonged to ritual. Science did not answer all my questions, so I turned to magic. Through Los Angeles' hidden spiritual underground, I discovered the writings of Aleister Crowley and the law of Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. To most, Crowley was a madman, an obscenity, a theatrical occultist. To me, he was something else entirely. He spoke in the language I had always known. Will, not desire, not ego. Will as a cosmic force, the engine behind reality itself. I joined the Ordo Templi Orientis, O.T.O, quickly rising to leadership within the Agape Lodge. By day, I was a leading figure in American rocket science. By night, I conducted ceremonial magic, sexual alchemy, invocations to archetypal forces older than recorded history. To the outside world, these roles were incompatible. To me, they were the same pursuit. Science sought to master physical force, magic sought to master metaphysical force. Both followed the same law. Focused intent produces measurable change. And then fate delivered to my doorstep a man who would reshape both my life and American occultism forever, a man named L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard arrived as a storyteller, a drifter, a charismatic manipulator wrapped in charm and ambition. We became brothers in ritual and adversaries in destiny. Together we embarked on what would become one of the strangest magical operations of the 20th century, the Babalon Working. The goal was nothing less than to invoke a divine feminine entity, to incarnate a new archetypal force into human flesh. A being Crowley himself had foreseen, a living bridge between worlds, an avatar of transformation. For months we conducted complex ceremonial rites involving ecstatic trance, planetary alignments, and prolonged sexual magic. I believed, truly believed, that reality itself responded. Strange synchronicities multiplied, dreams turned prophetic. The air seemed charged with unseen presence. But behind the veil of invocation, treachery unfolded. Hubbard defrauded me. He vanished with my money, my lover, and my trust. The magical brotherhood I believed we shared dissolved into betrayal. He would later reinvent himself as the founder of Scientology. I would remain the sorcerer engineer history tried to forget. Yet the working I believed succeeded. Something had entered the world, whether angel or demon I could not say. But the universe felt changed. My occult life did not remain hidden forever. The U.S. government began to notice not only my reckless personal behavior, but my known involvement with ritual magic, Thelema, and radical ideology. In the rising paranoia of the Cold War, this made me dangerous. My security clearance was revoked. I was barred from classified work. The same government that had built the foundations of spaceflight on my experiments now locked me out of the future I had helped create. I watched as others rose on the scaffolding of my work. The space race accelerated. Rockets climbed higher. Humanity edged closer to the stars, and I was left behind. But exile has a way of sharpening obsession. If I could no longer build the physical engines that would leave Earth, I would pursue the spiritual engines that could remake it. With official science gone, I returned completely to instability, both practical and mystical. Money vanished, experiments grew more dangerous. I worked alone with increasingly volatile explosives in makeshift home laboratories. Every test was a dance with annihilation, every ignition a wager with oblivion. I no longer feared death. Fire had become sacrament. And then, on June 17, 1952, the inevitable arrived. A massive explosion tore through my laboratory. Witnesses described shattered windows blocks away, a thunderclap that shook the street. I was found horribly burned and mangled by debris. I lingered for hours before dying in a hospital bed. Official reports ruled it an accident. Many did not believe that. Some said suicide, some said assassination, some said ritual sacrifice. None could prove their claim, but all agreed on one thing. The man who tried to fuse magic and rockets had finally been consumed by flame. After my death, history tried to simplify me. They called me a brilliant scientist who lost his way. They called me an occultist who wandered too far into fantasy. They called me a cautionary tale. Yet none of those labels captured the truth. Without my work, America's early rocket programs would not have existed. Without my fuel innovations, solid propellant rockets would not have become dominant. Without my experimental recklessness, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory would not stand where it does. And yet, without my obsession with will, ritual, and transformation, I would never have pursued the stars so feverishly in the first place. I was not two men. I was one equation expressed in two languages. I did not reach the stars in a rocket, but my work helped others do so. I did not incarnate a goddess in flesh, but the idea terrified and fascinated a generation. Perhaps my greatest sin was not recklessness, it was refusal. Refusal to accept that the universe could be divided into neatly labeled boxes, science in one, mysticism in another. I believed the cosmos was a single machine governed by both equation and enchantment. In that belief I burned, and in that flame I left a trail that humanity still follows skyward. Because even now, when rockets tear free from gravity and vanish into the heavens, they still ride on a fire I help to ignite. You've been watching the Esoteric Unveiled, exploring hidden orders, forgotten truths, and forbidden knowledge. Like and subscribe.